So don't start my time yet. 17 minutes. Right? I'll tell you when to start.
I gave him 2 more since Suzanne Gladney did such a good job.
And I'm no Suzanne Gladney. She started something. You know, I'm just a volunteer, and that's mainly what I'm going to talk about is just like volunteering and being, you know, just doing things. And I didn't start Casey Tenants. I didn't, you know, I'm just a guy. But yeah, and there's like, what, 9 pastors here, I think, and a state senator, and my mom, and I didn't sign up for this.
Obama was supposed to come.
This is something else. Yeah, so my mom and Holly and KK are the only people that I'll like do anything for. You ask me and I'll do it, so here I am. So I'm doing, like I said, I'm just going to kind of, it's not all going to be about CBB, it's kind of about me and my journey, but I'm going to start in 2004. That's when I became a Christian again. I was listening to a lot of AM radio preachers for some reason. Lester Roloff, I don't know if it tried to ring a bell with anybody, but Billy Graham and Ravi Zacharias, and I just listened to it, driving back and forth to work for some reason. My kids were little, and my granddad had just died, and I was just like searching, and so pretty soon I opened the paper. Back then you could open the paper and find churches, and so I found Cherokee Christian Church, found out that my, when I was a kid, my pastor's nephew now worked there, and I walked in, and Gene Alt was the former mayor of Leawood, and he welcomed me with open arms, and we just, so, and like all churches, or like a lot of denominational churches, it was dying. And so I quickly became an elder. I started teaching Sunday school, yeah, like my grandmother did for 50 years probably. And so I went along like that for about 4 years, just reading the Bible, teaching, you know, just really involved in the church. But I just felt like something was growing in me, and it is kind of like one of those things where your mind follows where your heart is. Is that right? And I was just looking for something different, and so I went, my mom actually gave me a thing at Village Presbyterian. There was a talk there about poverty in the Northeast. And I've never been to Boston, but I thought, you know, maybe that would be interesting for me, and I went to it. And Eric Garbison was there, and Steve Sheridan, and they were talking about not Boston, but the Northeast, like right over there. And I had no idea. And I'd never heard of that, and I'd never heard of Dorothy Day, and I'd never heard of the Catholic Worker House, and it was just all really confusing to me. And I wanted to learn more about it. And it was, you know, I love those kind of talks, especially at church, where there's just like me and 9 ladies over the age of 80, you know, with great hair. Those are always good talks. And so I went to a lot of those back then. But then I went and visited Eric and Jody and Liberty and Steve, and they showed me around Cherith Brook, and I started to kind of understand it, and I wanted to learn more, and so I started volunteering there. I would take 1 Friday off every month and go clean showers. And I did that for a while, quite a while. And then I just kind of started thinking I should do more. You know, I'm good at cleaning showers, like good enough anyway. Gary's better, but I did it. And then I learned about Health Partnership Clinic, which is in Johnson County. It's that we take care of people with no insurance. And at that point, the way it would work is that you could just kind of volunteer to see 1 or 2 patients in your office, however often you wanted to, and then you could order labs on them, x-rays, and operate on them if you needed to. It was all sort of taken care of. But I asked if I could come out there, actually. So I started going out there on Friday afternoons, at least once a month, sometimes twice, and see these patients. Then I could operate on them at St. Luke South. And that was good. I met a lot of interesting people. That felt a little bit more in line with where I was headed. And so everything for me is in 4 years. That was 2008. 2012, I was, actually in November 2011, I was driving to Wichita with a nun to the annual meeting of the Kansas Coalition Against the Death Penalty. I want to back up just a second. So also in 2008 when I met Holly. That's important. That's important. It was the same month. I met Eric and Jody, I met Holly, and the first week that I showed up, Daryl Burton was there too. And Daryl Burton's my age, and a lot of you know him, and he's, because of the dark color of his skin and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, he got put in prison for 24 years for something he didn't do while I was growing up and living my life. And that really struck me, and that really made an impact on me, those first, kind of when all of this was coming together in my mind. And so back to 2012, and so that's why I was in the Kansas Coalition Against the Death Penalties, because of Daryl and just that kind of feeling. And but by then I was really wanting to go to Africa. I really wanted to go to Africa. I was trying to figure out how to get there. I was looking at in Ethiopia at fistula hospitals and things, and I wasn't really qualified to do that kind of thing. And so she prayed. Like we told each other stories for 6 hours, and on the way back she was praying. She's like, I really feel like you're going to go to Africa soon. And wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later, I got an email. There was this 12-year-old girl in Mali, Africa, West Africa, who needed a surgery. She had a ureter that kind of went the wrong place. She was born this way, and she just leaked urine out all the time. And she couldn't go to school. And she had shown up 3 years earlier, and there was a doctor who could have fixed her, but they just didn't have time. You never have time to fix everybody. And so then her mom brought her back every year, and no one would show up that could fix her. So I said, sure, of course. I've never done the surgery. I don't operate on 12-year-olds. I don't know where Mali is, but I am in. And so I figured it out and went. And it was amazing. That was where I met Ibrahima Kojo, who later we brought to the United States, and we started Grace Schools together. And also that year is when I went to Uganda for the first time. And also that year is when I met Pratibha Kari, who was in my room in Uganda, and she's from India. And I'm like, I want to go to India. And so it took about 3 years to figure that out, but we ended up going to India together multiple times. So that's what was happening then for the next several years. By a couple of, before the pandemic, all of my vacation was doing these kinds of things. But then I started feeling weird about that. By about 2016, I wasn't able to do Health Partnership Clinic anymore because of all these Fridays I was taking off going to foreign countries. And I wanted to do something street medicine. It just sounded cool. It was starting to kind of come up, and there's a couple organizations in Kansas City that were starting to do it, but none of them seemed quite right, or I just wasn't brave enough to make the leap. And then Daryl Cantrell called me and told me I should meet KK, and that she had just finished her nurse practitioner. Again, a lot of this is a story. It may not be true, but this is my idea of what's true. She had just finished nurse practitioner school, and to just do this, to do street medicine, and either on purpose or just coincidentally, she married Chris, who was, the guy at Micah, and so it all worked out to where we started. So then I heard about this, and we had coffee at Mud Pie, I think June of 2016. Sophia was there, and I learned about it, and I said, yeah, I want to do this, and I'll be there until somebody better comes along, which I didn't think it'd be that long, because I'm just a urologist. But I think by June I was going out there on Mondays, and then pretty quickly she wanted to get out on the streets, and so we had these crazy days of driving around in Chris's truck all packed in with the medications and just back and forth. I think it's more organized now. Across the city, you'd hear about somebody under a bridge, or Uplift van would have somebody, and we were out from like 5 until midnight a lot of Wednesdays. And it saved my life. During all this time, I also have an actual life that things are going on, and some of them were stressful, some of them were fine, but this was really an important time to be involved in this. And it's cool how things overlap. I mean, a lot of you guys are all my friends, and there's people on Zoom that are my friends, and a lot of you overlap in my life, and I just love that. And like Carla and Kay, I think they're both on, and they're my Uganda friends, but they're also been really involved in CBB since the beginning. And people from Peace and people from St. Luke's. And anyway, I'm just going to jump ahead to this at this point. CBB's grown a lot in the last 5 years. We have four employees. They're not all full-time, but KK is now a full-time employee and is the CEO. We have a caseworker, a nurse, an administrator. There's 7 clinics every week. Some of them are freestanding, some are driving around. There's 7 events every week. Then we think we have 4 monthly ones, hundreds of volunteers. We've got this bus, a van, with storehouses, with offices, and it's just really, really growing. And just, again, some numbers. From last quarter, we saw 1,900 encounters. 1,000 total patients in one quarter. That's up from 600 the quarter before. 550 total vaccines, get a lot of vaccines. And, I think it's important always to kind of use your talents and figure out where you should be using them. in whatever capacity you're able to, and also just when people call you to do things, you should do it. If it fits this. I mean, there was one time I remember I was kind of curled up in a ball, laying on my bed, kind of upset and anxious, and KK called and asked what I was doing, and I told her exactly that. Saturday, I'm curled up in a ball in my bed. And so she said she wanted me to go to Truman and check on Frank. And I'm like, I've never been into Truman before. I'm a doctor. I'm not really comfortable like figuring out how to get there as a visitor, but I did it. I figured out how to get into Truman and visited Frank, and he had just had a fresh tracheostomy, and they were going to discharge him to the street with no electricity and no way to suction him, and it was just a mess. And I just sat there and listened to his stories, and they're crazy stories, and I told him some of mine, and it was just a really lot better use of my time than laying on my bed. And then there's, I'm just going to do a few more. So one of the things that CVB does is we're trying to consolidate like the care of all the urban core, the homeless, and the people experiencing homelessness in the urban core, to where, and KK has this vision, and she's the one that does all this, but when people are discharged from the hospital, for instance, that we could find out about it and help kind of transition their care, and so we're not just finding out third hand that somebody maybe had frostbite and 3 toes removed, and they've been laying there for a week before we get there to start helping heal them. But we're getting there. We're getting there. But that's the kind of thing we see. I'd never seen frostbite before I started doing this, and Ed, they both had toes removed, and they were out in an area not too far from where we usually go, but it was far enough away that we wouldn't have found him. I think it's, again, second or third hand found out about him. And, the Cheryl and KK and Kay and Carla, every day they would go and check on them, and then they would start to let these toes and stumps heal, despite the best efforts of Ed and Ed to not let it heal. I never knew what a missed hit was, I think, until this year. I mean, so maybe it's just, I don't notice things for a while, but it seems like the drug problem here is a lot worse than it used to be. It seems like more and more people are using drugs, they're getting infections from drugs, and it's just a horrible problem, but it's things that would just go untreated probably if they're out there, and they're able to show up, and if they say what it is or it doesn't say, I don't care what it is, it's just an abscess to treat, whether they call it a bug bite or a missed hit. And we're able to do vaccines and things like that. And I just want to talk about Johnny for a minute. Johnny was one of our early kind of stories. He was in the woods off of 12th Street, and he had a really bad back, sore back. He couldn't move. We checked on him, I think, once, and then came back, I don't know what, a day or two later or whatever, and he was unable to get up at all. He had just been laying there dying because of his back pain and his drug use and his everything. And the stronger people in our group carried him out of there and put him in the truck or a van, and I called St. Luke's and I said a friend of mine is coming in and with a bad back and needs help. And over the next weeks, between just the doctors at St. Luke's and the nurses and the KK and Cheryl and everybody that visited him and advocated for him, he got IV antibiotics and it started to improve, and he ended up ending at Shalom House and did great there. And I don't know if he's graduated, he's a drug and alcohol counselor at this point. He's got his own place, he's got his own truck, and it's just from pulling this thin guy out of the woods, it's just remarkable. And there's several stories like that, things that people would not be alive if it wasn't for KK and Care Beyond the Boulevard. Yeah, so then I don't know what's going to happen next. It's 2020, 4 years later, it's always 4 years for me. All of a sudden COVID happened and all my medical missions went away. And I was supposed to go to Uganda in September, and we're not. We're supposed to go in February to India, maybe. And so, I don't know. I mean, I'll have to look back. I'll report back in 2024 and let you know what happened. But I'm just really lucky to be able to talk to people all around the city and around the world, all ages of adults, men and women, all socioeconomic groups. And I think it's important to put yourself out there. And it doesn't just happen. And you won't always feel needed or important or be sure where you fit in, but it's just important to do it. And write checks too. So don't just volunteer, but write checks to Care Beyond the Boulevard. And Anyway, that's it. So I just want to say, Lord, we're so thankful for your plan. Help us to be the bread of life for each other. Amen.